Today's the day. Excuse me. Excuse me. There you go. Well, today's Independence Day. Excuse me. Just waiting for the people. Oops. That was my water bottle. That's what it sounds. Excuse me. That's my phone. Always. Excuse me. let's just say this: if there's American bald eagle around my yard, maybe I would take a picture of it and probably post it on social media. Whenever I see American bald eagle around here. Hello, Kimberly. You're just in time to celebrate the 4th of July stream. Oh man, I wish I could have had the 4th of July donuts. What kind? What kind? Are they jelly or are they jelly donuts? Or just one with holes on them? Hey, I was asking. Oh, okay, Krispy Kreme. Right. Did you hear that? That's the American truck. That has a great American um engine in it. Very great, right? Hey, Kimberly, you never heard about the story of America before, have you? If you want, I could tell you the story, but it might be long. I've heard of it in history class. Are you there? I mean, it's gonna be a little long story of America. Or I could just tell you the story about independence and um expansion. Well, nothing's wrong with telling the story about, even though I just learned that from social studies and how that happened. That's my cat. My battery's 20%. I guess I have to hold this. Since it's the phone while it's charging. I guess there's no point of that. Hmm. My foot. All that, um, I don't know what I'm gonna say. Putting it on the desk or something. Yeah, that kind of hurt a little. Sheesh. I got all that shiver around here. Excuse me for a sec. Sorry. I have to check how my dad is doing. It is a good it is a good thing though. Supporting family members is the important thing. It's it's true. It's really true. Oh man. Excuse me. All right. Camera's back in position. Back in position is the way that it was started. Oh boy. Independence Day is today. So I put the flags right where Maddie is holding. It's okay, Shorty. I stayed up all night too. And hello. Or 3 in the morning. So I could just, you know, I don't know what to say. I forgive you. I forgive you, Shorty. If you want, Shorty, I could tell you the story about America and how it's celebrated. It might be a long story, but I could tell you about Independence Day and how we celebrate it. All right. I mean, it would be interesting too. So that people can learn. Well, young people can learn about America and history, which is good. That's good, Shorty. You'll feel free to come back to the stream whenever you feel like it, right? I mean, I know you're very busy and all. Whatever suits you best. And it'll be great. Hey, Bimel, get down. Don't climb on my window. I know you tried to help me closing the window, but I need a little fresh air. Which is I want. Hmm. But she haven't told you about America. Well, did, well, excuse me. Did she? I was just asking though. Was she telling you about the history of Independence Day or? Oh, you have. Well, I didn't know that. Hmm. That sounds very interesting, though. Telling telling youngsters a story about America is really the best suitable to learn about how Independence Day was. Excuse me for a sec. What are you doing? What are you doing, goofy cat? What are you doing? What are you doing, goofy cat? Ugh. Excuse me. It all begins. It has been generally accepted that the first inhabitants of North America migrates from. Ooh. I press F to respect your grandpa. In a good way. My, migrate my migrate from Slavia by the Greenland Bridge and arrive at least 12,000 years ago. However, some evidence suggested an even earlier dates of arrival. I press F to respect your grandma also. In a good way still. The, the Covius culture, which appeared around 11,000 BC, is believed to represent the first wave of human settlements of the Americas. This was likely the first of three major waves of migration into North America. Later waves brought the ancient ancestors of the present day out the Baskins, uh, Alouettes, and Eskimos. Yeah. Over time, indigenous cultures in the North America grew increasingly complex, and some, such as the pre-Columbian Mississippian culture in the Southeast, developed active advantage agriculture, agriculture, and complex societies. The state of Cahokia is the largest, most complex pure Colombian archaeological site in the modern day in the United States. In the four regions, ancestral Puebloan culture developed from centuries agricultural expressions. The Haudenosaunee. So, I was reading those. So I don't know what that means, but enjoy. Oh, which is located in the southern Great Lakes. Religion was established at the some point between the 12th and 15th centuries. Most prominent along the Atlantic coast, where the Algonquian tribes who practice hunting and trapping along with the limited cultivation. It is maintain the native population of North America. At the time Europeans' contact is difficult. Douglas H. Alberlaker of the Smithsonian installation admitted that that were there was a populations of 92,916 in the South Atlantic states and populations of 4,616 in the Gulf states. But most academics regard this figure as too low. Anthropologist Henry F. Dupuis believe the populations were the much higher, suggesting around 1.1 million along the shores of the Gulf of Mexico, 2.2 million peoples living between Florida and Massachusetts. 5.2 million in Mississippi Valley and tributaries, and around 700,000 people in the Florida Peninsula. Further information. Colonial history of the United States and 13 colonies. Claims of an early colonists of the coastal New England by the Norse are disputed and controversial. The first documented arrival of Europeans in the continental United States is that of Spanish conquistadors such as the Juan Ponce de Leon, who made his first expeditions to Florida in 1513. Even earlier, Christopher Columbus had landed in Puerto Rico on his 1493 voyage in San Juan was settled by the Spanish a decade later. The Spanish set up the first settlements in Florida and New Mexico, such as St. Augustine, often considered the nation's oldest city, and Santa Fe. The French established their own settlements along the Mississippi River, notably New Orleans, successful English. Settlement of the eastern coast of North America began with the Virginia colony in 1607 at Jamestown, and with the Pilgrims colony and Plymouth in 1620, which is 401 years ago. The Continuance first elected Legislative Assembly, Virginia House of Burgesses, was founded in 1619. Documents such as the Mayflower Compact that the Fundamental Orders of Connecticut established precedents of the representative self-government and constitutionalism that would develop throughout the American colonies. Many settlements were dissenting Christians who came seeking religious freedom. In 1980, sorry about that. In 1784, the Russians were the first Europeans to establish the settlements in Alaska. At the Three Saints Bay, Russian America once spent much of the present day, the state of Alaska. Decolonization, many European settlers were subjected to food shortages, diseases, and attacks from Native Americans. Native Americans were also often at war with neighboring tribes and European settlers. In many cases, however, the natives and settlers came to defend on one another. Settlers tried or food and animal pelts, native for guns and tools and other European goods. Natives taught many settlers to cultivate corn, beans, and other foodstuffs. Europeans, missionaries, and others felt it was important to civilize the Native Americans, and regarded them to adopt Europeans' agricultural practices and lifestyles. However, with the increased European colonization of North America, the Native Americans were disabled, often killed. The native populations of American declined after the Europeans' arrival for various reasons. Primary diseases such as smallpox and measles. European settlers also began trafficking of the African slaves into a colonial America via the transatlantic slave trade. Because of the lower prevalence of tropical diseases and better treatment, slaves had much higher life expectancy in North America than in South America, leading to a rapid increase in their numbers. The colonial society was largely divided over religious and moral implications of slavery, and several colonies enacted acts colony's past acts, both against and in the favor of the practice. You'll catch up soon. I promise, Shorty. However, by the turn of the 18th century, excuse me, African slaves had supplanted Europeans into turn servants as cash crop labor, especially in the American South. The 13 colonies, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Delaware, Maryland, Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia, that would become the United States of America, administrated excuse me for a second. Excuse me, sorry. I got something in my throat. Anyway, enough of that. Continue. That would become the United States of America, where administrated by the British as overseas dependencies. All nonetheless had local governments, with the elections open to the most free men. With extremely high birth rates, low death rates, and steady settlements, the colonial population grew rapidly, eclipsing Native American population. The Christian revivalist movements of the 1730s and 1740s, known as the Great Awakening, false interest both in religions and religious liberty. War 1766. No. What am I gonna say? I just went ahead. Sorry. During the 7 Years' War, 1750, the U.S. as the French and Indian War, British forces captured Canada from the French with the creation of the Province and Province of Quebec. Canada's French population would remain isolated from the English-speaking colonial dependencies of the Nova Scotia. 。 . 。 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 。 . 。 . 。 。 . 。 。 . 。 。 . 。 。 。 。 。 。 . 。 。 。 。 。 。 。 . 。 。
。 . 。 .
Newfoundland and the 13 colonies, excluding the Native Americans who lived there. The 13 colonies had population of over 2.1 million in 1770, about a third that of Britain. Despite continuing new rivals, the rate of natural increase was such that by the 1770s, only a small minority of Americans had been born overseas. The colony's distance from the Britain had allowed the development of the self-government. But their un, unprecedented success motivated British monarchs to critically seek to reassert the royal authority. Now, so without any of these suggestions, the independence and expansions. Further information, American Revolution and critical evaluation of the United States. The American Revolutionary War, fought by the 13 colonies against the British Empire, was the first successful war of independence by non-Europeans in Italy against a European power in modern history. Americans had developing ideology of republicanism, asserting that government rested on the will of the people as expressed in their local legal letters. They depend their rights as Englishmen and no taxations without representation. The British insisted on the administrating in the empire through the Parliament, and the conflict escalated into war. The Second Continual Congress, the unanimously adopted the Declaration of Independence. On July 4th, 1776. On this day is celebrated annually as Independence Day. In 1777, the Articles of Confederation established by the decentralized government that operates until 1789. After its defeat, the Siege of Yorktown in 1781, Britain signed a peace treaty. American so American Soviet sovereignty became internationally organized, and country was granted all lands east of the Mississippi River. Transitions with the Britain remain, however, leading to a war of 1812. Which was fought to draw. Which is fought to a draw. Nathalists lead the Philadelphia Convention of 1887. In the writing, the United States Constitution ratified in state confrontations in 1788. The federal government was organized into three branches in 1789. On the principle of creating celerity checks and balance, George Washington, who had led the Continental Army to victory, was the first president elected under the new Constitution. The Bill of Rights, forming federal restrictions of the personal freedom and granting a range of legal protections, was adopted in 1791. Excuse me for a sec. I'll continue the story. Sorry, Maddie. Alright, I'm back. Although the federal government outlawed American Pacific precipitation, any Atlantic slave trade in 1807. After 1820, civilization of the highly profitable cotton crop explode in the deep south. Along with it, the slave population. The second great awakening, especially in the period 1800 through 1840, converted millions to evangelical Protestant and Protestantism in the North. It energized multiple social inform moments, including Alboltonism in the South, Methodist and Baptist proselytize among slaves populations. Beginning in the late 18th century, American settlers began to expand westward, prompting a long series of American Indian Wars. The 1803 Louisiana Purchase almost doubled the nation's area. Spain ceded Florida and other Gulf Coast territory in 1819. The Republic of Texas was annexed in 1845. During the period of expansionism and the 1846 Oregon Treaty with Britain led to U.S. control of the present day American Northwest. Victory in the Mexican-American War resulted in the 1848 Mexican concession of California and much of the present day American Southwest, making the U.S. span in continent. The California Gold Rush of 1848 1849 spurred migration to the Pacific coast, which led to the California Genocide and the the Homestead Acts. Nearly 10% of the total area of the of the United States, and to private railroad companies and colleges as part of the land grants spurred economic develop after Civil War. New tradition, new transcontinental railways made re, re, relocation earlier for the settlers, expand in, inter, inter, internal trade, and increase conflicts with Native Americans. In 1869, a new peace policy, normally promised to protect Native Americans from abuse, avoid further war, and secure their eventual U.S. civilization, citizenships. Nonetheless, large-scale conflict continued throughout the West into the 1900s. American Civil War and Reconstruction area. Era, era, con, Ira, on a conable sectional conflict regarding of the enslavement of Africans and African Americans ultimately led to an American Civil War. With the 1860 election of Republican Abraham Lincoln, conventions in the 13 slave states declared sections and formed the Confederate States of America. The South, or the Confederacy, while the federal government, the 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 Union, and maintained that the sections was illegal. In order to bring about this section, military action was entitled, was intended, intended by the secessionists, and the Union responded in kind. Ensuing war would become the deadliest military conflict in American history, resulting in the deaths of approximately 618,000 soldiers, is as well as many civilizations. The Union entirely simply fought to keep the country entitled netherless and encapsulates mountain after 1863, and Lincoln deserves his emancipation's proclamation. The main purpose of the war, from the Union's viewpoints, became the abolition of slavery. Indeed, when the Union ultimately won the war in April of 1865, each of the states in the defeated South was required to ratify the 13th Amendment, which is prohibit slavery except the penal labor. Two other amendments were also ratified, ensuring citizenship for blacks and, at least in the theory, voting rights for them as well. Reconstruction began in the earliest following the year, while President Lincoln attempted to foster friendship and forgiveness between the Union and the former Confederacy. His assassination on April 14th, 1865, drove a wedge between North and South again. Republicans in the federal government made it their goals to oversee the rebuilding of the South and to ensure the rights of the American of African American. They proceeded until the Compromise of 1877, when the Republicans agreed to cease protecting the rights of the African American in the South in order to Democrat to concede the presidential election of 1876. Southern white Democrats, calling themselves Redeemers, took control of the South after the end of Reconstruction. Beginning of the nadir of the American race elections from 1890 to 1910. The remainders established so-called Jim Crow laws, disenfranchising most blacks and some poor whites throughout the regions. Blacks would face the racial segregations in nationwide, especially in the South. They also constantly experience vigilant violence, include lynching. Economic history of the United States, technical and industrial history of the United States. In the North European and the unperceived influx of immigrants from the southern and eastern Europe supplied a surplus of the labor countries' industrializations and transformed its culture. Nation infrastructure, including telegraphs and transcontinental railroads, spurred economic growth and greater settlements and development of the American Old West. The later inventions of the electric light and the telephone would also affect communications and European life. The United States fought Indian War west of the Mississippi River from 1810 to at least 1890. Most of these conflicts ended with the cessation of the Native American territory and their conflict to Indian reservations. Additionally, the Trial of Tears in the 1830s ex- ex- exemplified the Indian racial policy that forcibly resettled Indians. This further expand ex, ex rage under the under medic under mechanic sale civilization, increasing surprises for international markets. Mainland expansions also included the purchase of Alaska from Russia in 1870 no 1867. In 1893, pro-American elements in Hawaii overthrew the Hawaiian monarchy and formed the Republic of Hawaii, which the U.S. examined in 1898. Puerto Rico, Guam, and the Philippines were ceded by Spain in the same year, following the Spanish-American War. American Samoa was acquired by the United States in in 1900s after the end of the Second Samoan Civil War. The U.S. Virgin Islands were purchased from Denmark in 1917. World War One, Great Depression, and World War Two. The United States remained neutral from the outbreak of World War One in 1914 until 1917, when it joined the war as an escalated power alongside the Allies of World War One, helping to turn the tide against the Central Powers. In 1919, President Woodrow Wilson took a leading diplomatic role at the Paris Peace Conference and advocated strongly for the U.S. to join the League of Nations. However, the Senate refused to approve this and did not ratify the Treaty of Federal Allies that established the League of Nations. In 1920, the women's rights movement won the passage of the Constitutional Amendment, granting women's suffrage. The 1920s and 1930s saw the rise of radio for mass communication and the invention of early televisions. The prosperity of the Roaring '20s ended with the Wall Street crash of 1929 and the onset of the Great Depression. After his election as president in 1932, Franklin D. Roosevelt responded with the New Deal. The great migrations of millions of African Americans out of the American South began before World War I and extended throughout the 1960s. Whereas the Dust Bowl of the mid-1930s impoverished many farming communities and spurred on new waves of Western migration. At first effectively neutral during World War II, the United States began supplying material to the Allies in March 1941. Throughout the Land Lease program on December 7th, 1941. 80 years ago, the Empire of Japan launched a surprise attack on Pearl Harbor, permitting the United States to join the Allies against the Axis power. And in the following year, to in turn, about 120,000 U.S. residents, including American citizens of Japanese descent, although Japan attacked the United States first. The United the U.S. nonetheless pursued the Europe first de- defense policy. The United States thus left its West Asian colony, the Philippines, is located and fighting a losing struggle against Japanese inf- in- invasion and occupation. During the war, the United States was one four powers who met the plan the post-war world along the Britain, the civil the Soviet Union, and China. Although the nation lost around 400,000 military personnel, it in it emerged relatively in undamaged from greater economic and military influence. The United States played a leading role in the Bordering Woods and Yalta conferences on the new international financial installation and Europe's post-war reorganization as the Allied victory was won in Europe. A 1945 international conference held in San Francisco, produced in United Nations Charter, which became active after the war. The United States and Japan then fought each other in the largest naval battle in history, the naval battle in history, the the Battle of Lake Gulf. The United States developed the first nuclear weapons and used them on the Japan in the cities of Hiroshima and the Nagasaki in August 1945. The Japanese surrendered on September 2nd, ending World War II. The Cold War and Civil Rights Era. After World War II, the United States had competed for power, influences, and protect during what became known as the Cold War, driven by the econological divide between capitalizations and communism. They dominating the military affairs of the Europe, which the U.S. and its NATO allies on the side, and the Soviet Union and its Warsaw Pact allies on the other. The U.S. developed a policy containment toward the expansion of communist influence, while the U.S. and Soviet Union engaged in proxy wars and developed powers nuclear arsenals. The two countries avoid direct military conflict. The U.S. often opposed Third War movements that it was viewed as Soviet sponsors, occasionally pursued direct actions, pragmatic change against left-wing governments. Occasionally supporting authoritarians, right-wing regimes. American troops fought Communist, Chinese, and North Korean forces in the Korean War of 1950 through 1953. The Soviet Union's 1957 launch of the first federal satellite and its 1961 launch of the first crowded space interlated a space race, in which the United States became the first nation to land a man on the moon in 1969. The United States became increasingly involved in the Vietnam War, 1955 through 1975. Introducing the Compact Forces in 1965. Introducing at home, the U.S. had experienced sustained economic expansion and rapid growth of its population and middle class following World War II, after the surge in female labor participation, especially in the 1970s. By 1985, the majority of women aged 16 and over were employed. Constructions of the interstate highway system transformed the nation's infrastructure over the following decades. Millions moved from the farms and inner cities to large suburban housing developments. In 1949, in 1959, the United States formally expanded beyond the contiguous United States when territories of Alaska and Hawaii become, respectively, the 49th and 50th states admitted into the Union. The growing civil rights movements use nonviolence to confront segregation and discrimination, with Martin Luther King Jr. become a prominent leader and figurehead. A combination of court decisions and legislation culminating in the civil wars. In the Civil Rights Acts of 1968, sought to the end racial discrimination. While meanwhile, a center culture movement grew, which was fueled by obsession to the Vietnam War, the Black Power movement, and sexual revolution. The launch of a war on prosperity expanded the entitlements and welfare spending, including the creation of Medicare and Medicaid, two programs that provided health coverage to the elderly and poor, respectively, and the means tested food stamps program and aid to families dependent children. in 1970s and nearing 1980s saw the onset stagflation. The United States supported Israel during the Yom Kippur War, and in response, the country faced an oil embargo from EPEC, oil exporting countries. To spark the 1973 oil crisis, in 1979, President Jimmy Carter brokered a peace treaty between Egypt and Israel. This was the first time an Arab nation reorganized Israeli existence. After his election, President Ronald Reagan responded to economic stagnation with free market real 10 reforms following the collapse of the detain. He abandoned containment and entitled the more aggressive rollback strategy for the Soviet Union. The late 1980s brought a thaw in the relations with the Soviet Union, and its collapse in 1991 finally ended the Cold War. This brought about in unpoetry, with the U.S. in challenge as the world's dominant superpower. After the Cold War, the conflict in the Middle East triggered a crisis in 1990 when Iraq invaded and exfiltrated Kuwait and Italy, and I mean an ally of the United States, fearing the spread of instability. In August, President George H. W. Bush launched and led the Gulf War against Iran, waged until January 1991. By coalition forces from 34 nations, it ended in the explosions of Iraq forces of Kuwait and restoration of the mortuary. originally nation originating within the U.S. military defense networks, the internet spread to the national economic platforms and excuse me, and then to the public in the late 1990s. Greatly effectively the global economy, society, and culture due to the dot, dot due to the dot-com boom, stable mon, mon, monetary policy, oops, and reduce social welfare spending. The 1990s saw the longest economic expansion in the modern U.S. history. Beginning in 1994, the U.S. signed the North American Free Trade Agreement, NAFTA, causing trade among the U.S. Then tragedy had came true. On September 11th, in September 11th, 2001, Al Qaeda terrorist hijackers flew passenger planes into a World Trade Center in New York City and the Pentagon near Washington, D.C., killing nearly 3,000 people. In response, President George Will Bush launched the war on the terror, which includes war in Alpha excuse me Alpha Afghanistan and the 2003 through 2001 Iraq War. A 2011 military operation in Pakistan led to the death of the leader of Al-Qaeda. The government policy designed to promote affordable housing, widespread failures in corporate and regularly governance, and historically low interest rates set by the Federal Reserve led to the mid-2000s housing bubble, which culminated with the 2008 financial crisis, the nation's largest economic contraction since the Great Depression. During the crisis, assets owned by the American lost about a quarter of their values. Barack Obama crisis then Barack Obama, the first multiracial president with an African American ancestry, was elected in 2008 amid the crisis and subsequently passed stimulus measures and the Dodd-Frank Acts in attempt to mitigate in its negative effects and ensure there would not be a repeat of the crisis in 2010. In 2010, President Obama led efforts to pass the Affordable Care Act, the most sweeping reform to the nation's healthcare system in nearly 5 decades. In presidential election of 2016, Republican Donald Trump was elected as the 45th President of the United States. A result fueled one of the biggest political upsets since the 1948 election. People on social media were making jokes and memes about Donald Trump until November of 2020. And and also it and also the Trump supporters in the presidential election of 2020, Democrat Joe Biden was elected as the 46th president. On January 6, 2020, I mean, on January 26, 2021, which is about 6 months ago, supporters of outgoing President Trump stormed the United States Capitol in the unsuccessful efforts to disrupt the presidential electoral college vote count. People in the world wouldn't be mean against others, but at people who are black, Asian, white, we still have to support each other who we are. Whenever what color skin we are, we need to accept each other who we are. And let the world get along. As we could follow love, harmony, and peace for people in the world. We have to support who we are and get along with others. We are people. We support freedom with love and care with people's race and people's care. We need to accept ourselves who we are. And who we are the people in the world having a great 4th of July. And that's why all we need to do for the rest of our life is get along. And that's how we learn. So I hope everyone will have a nice Independence Day this year today. No more drama, no more fights, no more people arguing about race. All we need to do is get along. And happy 4th of July to everyone. I hope everyone will have a great 4th of July this year. In a good way. Sorry, my throat. And I hope everyone will have a great 4th of and happy 4th of July for to everyone and forever. Have a great day.